Hello, everyone. We are officially live. Welcome to another Learning Sound and Synthesis Spotlight Series interview. And I'm here today with Dominique Dela Cruz. Welcome. I am so excited for today. Okay, we're going to be getting into probably a lot of different things, but we're going to be talking about the four kind of key factors or ideas that really helped Dominique to demystify the world of electronic music, which is something that can feel very confusing and very opaque, especially when you're just getting started, and to form a regular and fulfilling musical practice with modular synthesizers. So I'm really excited to get into this. Welcome to everyone who's tuning in live. It's great to see you here. If you are watching us live, go ahead and drop a comment, say hello, let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you're watching the replay, you can comment replay and let us know where you are, and we'll say hi to you in the future as well. So Dominique, can we start off just with a little intro, who you are and maybe what kind of music you like to make?
Yeah, I'm Dominique. I play multiple instruments. So I was the strongest instrument, I suppose, is the flute. I was classically trained in the flute. And I also play the guitar, the piano, percussion, a bunch of sound healing instruments, ngoni, think of everything. I kind of pick everything up. And of course the synth. So yeah, I've been classically trained and I've been playing music since I was a kid, and I've always really loved playing music and wanted to play and compose, but I always thought, in the classical realm, it's very prescriptive, I feel like, and they very much tell you, like, this is what you play, this is how you play it, you practice this amount of time. And so I've, growing up in that environment, I've always been really nervous to explore and improvise and make my own music, because I never really trusted my own musical voice, because I've always been told, this is how you play it, this is what you do. So it's just been a really, because I started playing music when I was 4. So it's just been a very long journey of me learning and unlearning everything that I've, through to the different instruments and classes that I've taken over the years. Kind of unlearning a lot of those things and relearning what it's like, or how I can really craft my own creative voice. And I've found, particularly with learning synths, it really opened my eyes in terms of like how much of a palette I can really have, and how much I can control and create kind of a really storytell in the way that I've always wanted to. And I've found that I've always, with improvising, I'll kind of jump around everywhere, and I think
That's great.
I always thought of improvising was, very jazz oriented, and I didn't have a background learning that. So I was very overwhelmed. And I think through learning about synths and effects and just everything, it started to be very similar to the way that I was learning classical music, and the freedom in which classical music evolves over time and throughout a piece. I've started to kind of play my different instruments in that way, and it's really given me this sense of like, oh, this is the way that feels right to me, and I can create all of the different landscapes in the way that feels authentic to me, and I don't have to play it in a way that I see other people improvising.
Oh, I love that so much. You just started us off with so many amazing thoughts. So thank you for doing that. I can totally relate to that feeling of starting with a more kind of, restricted or prescriptive kind of musical practice. Like, this is what music is. Like, that's really how I was trained as a younger person as well. And then coming into the world of, electronic music, modular synthesizers, all of these tools that kind of don't have the same kind of practice baked into them because they're brand new or they're relatively a lot newer, and just like, what do I do with this? It's such an open world. So I love that. And then the other thing that you said, I just want to highlight too for everyone is, having this feeling of improvisation being a specific thing that is like jazz only, I hear this a lot with different students. It's like, well, I'm not a real musician, or I don't really compose, or I can't really improvise, because we're thinking of it as like a very small little portion of what that could possibly mean. So I think it's really awesome, Dominique, to hear that you're exploring that in your own way. Like, what does improvisation mean to you?
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, amazing. Can you take us maybe a little bit back in time and paint us a picture about what it was like when you were just getting into the world of modular synthesis?
Yeah. So my husband, he's a huge like keyboard synth nerd, and so I always kind of we have a lot of semi-modulars at home, but I just was like, oh, these are just knobs, what do you do? And it was always just, but I was always kind of curious, and I would always hear musicians that I love playing synths, and like, what does that entail? I always just thought it was just a keyboard, and so at some point I started, over the past few years, I've been learning more beyond just the flute and learning different genres, listening to different music. And at some point, I think I was, I don't know how I even like found your class. I think you came up in my newsletter on my email, and I was like, oh, this seems very interesting. And me being very curious, and like, this can only help me. And so I think I just pretty much knew that I wanted to, there's something in me that just knew I wanted to explore what it is. And I had previously, back in college, I had been really interested in electronic music and creating stuff, but I was only on Ableton. And, back then there wasn't really much YouTube. And so I already felt like I was behind even before I started, because I was comparing myself to people that already had already had played music and played this stuff. And, on Ableton, there's all these plugins. It's just all of these different components that I'm like, I have no idea. And every time I'd go on Ableton, I just get so overwhelmed. And so I'd stop. So I would just, get into decision paralysis and stop. And so just fast forward, I think with this class, I realized like, oh, this might be a really good opportunity to conquer my fears of learning and being behind. And then taking the course, I realized that everything on Ableton that I was afraid of is just directly connected with synths and sound design. And I'm like, oh, and now when I go on Ableton, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not a scary place. This is actually pretty fun in here,
I love that. I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah, for anyone who's watching and listening who, has tried to get into any corner of the world of electronic music through Ableton or through modular synths or whatever it might be, semi-modular, if you feel at all that sense of like, I am lost, like what WTF is happening, just know that, first of all, that's really normal. It's really normal. And it doesn't mean that you're not capable or not smart enough. This is something that I say a lot, but it's because I really care about it. It doesn't mean you're not capable. You are. It's just a complicated thing to get into. And just keep going, ask questions, send me a DM. I'm happy to help. But yeah, that kind of beginning story, Dominique, is something I can personally really relate to. And I think a lot of people can as well. So once what happened next? I remember when we were kind of talking before going live, you shared that there were 4 main things that you did. I can also help jog your memory if necessary, that you found really helpful in terms of like working through those feelings of initial confusion and overwhelm. It'd be great to talk through some of those if you're open to it. Yeah. The first one that I remember you mentioning was just forming like a daily practice. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, that was huge. I think, like I mentioned before, I was, trained to have a practice log, and I practiced my scales for 5-10 minutes. So do my etudes, I do my, it was just very, very much, very regimented. And at some point, because I was learning so many instruments, I'm like, this is not possible. I cannot, because I tried. Like I've tried to do that with every instrument that I have, and I'm like, this is not sustainable. And at some point I just realized if I were to have, because I'm so passionate about music and it means so much to me, I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone. And I think once I came to that conclusion and to approach practice as fun, I think that was a huge thing for me to overcome, that like practice can be a fun thing. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be practicing your instrument for an hour every single day. And with that, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna play an instrument, like maybe a couple, depending on how I'm feeling, what's alive for me. And so whether it's, you know, watching something, watching a video and just messing around on Eurorack, or playing the drums or anything, or just pick up an instrument. I made it just so easy where I'm looking around, I'm like, okay, let me just pick that up and then I'll play it, or, you know, and I think also encompassed in that, it was important for me to realize that also watching these videos is also, are also, you know, in the class is also considered practice. Because I think oftentimes I would think, oh, I'm just watching these videos and like messing around on a screen. That didn't feel like practice because I wasn't tactilely touching anything like I usually do. And so also reframing that is just a different sort of musical practice, and that's also so important in my in progressing. That also really helped me.
Yeah, I love that. So it's less about doing it all every day and like doing something every day.
Yeah, and I think doing something every day really helped with my momentum and lessening the pressure that that I need to be perfect in every instrument. And I think just it, you know, because I've come at music with this idea that when I was younger, I was like, oh, I have to, if I'm not the best, then I'm just, why bother? And so because I can't be the best at everything, you just might as well just practice. And it's been so fun to just, to just to lower the standard a little bit, to, if you know, and just have fun on it and whatever I can do and whatever I can play on.
I love that. Yeah, I love that so much. Instead of, you know, so many times you can go into your studio or your practice area and be like, okay, what should I be doing right now? Like, what should I be doing to reach some external goal that's not even mine, or to like make my teacher happy or whatever? And instead to be like, what would be fun today? Like, what a great question for you to ask. And you're going to be then creating from that place of like joy, which means it's all going to be better.
Mhm.
Like the results are going to be better. You're probably going to learn more. You're just going to have a better time. I love that. Fun. Okay. So the next thing that you said was journaling. How does that factor into this daily
Everything.
practice?
So I've had a morning journaling practice for a couple of years, and my journaling practice just looks pretty much like brain dumping, kind of similar to the artist's way. We're just doing 3 pages of just dumping. And I've found, especially with music, there's so many things in my mind and so many judging thoughts and so much, a lot of my internal conflict I'm able to write down. And the moment I write it down, I'm like, oh, that's what I was thinking. That's crazy. That's a little much. You know, there's a lot of, then you could really witness the fact that, like, especially for me, because I'm so in my head and so judgy about how I play and how I'm showing up, my creative practices, to be able to see my hand write the words, I'm like, that's kind of mean. Or I'm like, that's like a lot. Or even so, I'm like, oh wow, there's a lot of creative inspiration I'm getting from this person and that person. And just being able to put words to the thoughts, because the thoughts really are swirling in my head, and I get so caught up in them. And being able to slow down and take a moment to just write that down, it really has helped me also see how my journey's been like along the way.
Beautiful. Okay. I love it. So daily practice, focusing on fun rather than just doing what you're supposed to do. Writing, journaling in some way, the brain dump, letting it go, getting things out, slowing down. I mean, that's a huge thing for so many parts of life.
Mhm.
Speaking of slowing down, one of the other things that you said was watching the course videos slowly, or just going through the learning sound and synthesis class slowly? Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, that's important, especially especially in this streaming age of pressing next, watch next, watch next, watch next. And I just have that, that tendency to just want to absorb, like think I'm absorbing everything. And I realize, and I did that at first, but it's a lot, and the way that I learn, I prefer to learn something really well before going on.
Right.
And being able to really and that I think that has been a big thing for my ego, to purposely be like, it's okay if you're focusing on LFOs for like a month and it's fine, and then you go to the next one, and then if you have to watch it again, you can, and it's a lot of just telling myself it's okay to just take your time. And the more that I took my time, the more I would start to notice it. Just like I started noticing things in the way that I was listening to music and the way that I was playing, and I'm like, oh, that's what was happening. And I like when I'm manipulating things, I'm like, oh, that's, and I start to connect the dots between the things that I was, that I just learned and the stuff that I already learned. It just really it provided me with a new way to also just deep listen and have an active listening practice.
That's awesome. Yeah. Slowing down, take your time. I say this a lot to the folks inside of learning sound and synthesis, but it's not a race. It can feel like a race. Like you said, Dominique, like you felt behind before you got started. That's such a common feeling. But really, this is your creative journey. It's your process, and it doesn't look like anyone else's, and it's okay for it to take as long as it takes. I'm definitely the kind of person who I am a slow learner, especially when it came to modular synthesis. Like I went over and over and over and over those fundamentals so many times. And that's why it really sunk in the way it did. But it also just took time, so it's okay. Yeah, it can feel like a step backwards, right? To be like, oh, here I go again, back on the LFO video. But like, it's not a step backwards if it's exactly what you need to solidify and move forward. So I think that's amazing. Okay, what was the last thing? Do you remember? Posting and sharing. Yeah.
Posting. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's been big. Posting and sharing. That's been more of on my Instagram. And I think in my creative practice, I've always loved or had this desire to perform and just play music and share. But again, I've always been so scared of that judgment and so scared of just I don't know. It just feels like the fight or flight response is very strong. And so at some point I'm like, okay, let me just record myself playing something and post it. And so I would just do that. And then I started doing that with like the different instruments that I'm learning. And it's been getting kind of easier and easier. And I think in that practice, I also allowed people to see what I was doing and see my progress and just be able to be seen by other people. So it wasn't, the creative process didn't feel as isolating as I was making it to be. I was just like in my zone thinking, and I think the moment that for me, the moment that I decided I'm just going to like put it out there just so everyone can witness it, they could also just press next. It really, again, lessened the severity of what I was thinking. And I wasn't thinking of it as like, oh, this has to be perfect. This has to be a piece that I'm playing for an audition. It's just, you're just playing it, it'll disappear in 24 hours and you move on. So that has also helped later on in if I'm playing live in front of people, it's been so much easier because I'm not as scared to just share and mess up because I did it already.
Good for you. Yeah, and you've got a performance coming up, right? Is that right?
Yeah. So I'm playing for one of my good friends who's also in the band that I'm in. He's doing a dance residency in Portland, and I'll be playing with my husband. We'll be playing the music for that performance.
That's amazing. Congratulations. Oh, I wish I could be there. So I'm curious, just to kind of go a little deeper into this idea of sharing your work and just putting things out there. How do you think that helped or informed your actual modular synthesis? Like, is there a link there? I'm very curious, like your modular synthesis learning.
I think that's a very good question. I think, well, something that I did very early on was, because I have a couple of, we have like a Moog DFAM, and I was like, and I have like a looper, and at some point, it was very early on in me participating in the class. And I was just playing around. I'm like, this is so cool. I was just so excited. I'm like, this is so cool. And so I just recorded myself and just posted it. And I think that was the first time where I was willing to share something so beginner, because I really, I didn't really have much of a background, but I just like, let me just post that. And I think in that connection, it really helped me, going back to the fun, made me excited to just post and share, to have fun. And I think that also informs the way of learning, to have fun with the learning process, to have fun with modular, because modulars can feel scary, but it's not. It's not. It's a really, like, if like once you decide it's going to be just you have to just make a decision to make it like a fun experience, and that's I think that's the link for me.
I love that. Make a decision for it to be fun. Yeah. That's actually really profound, because we can choose at any point when we come up against something we don't understand, or that is hard, or that is new to us, right? We can choose in that moment to be like, yikes, this is scary. This is intimidating. I probably can't do this, and I'm going to back away. Or we can choose to make it fun and be like, cool, I don't know what I'm doing yet, but like, let's see how fun it can be as we learn. And I just think that's such a beautiful way of thinking about it. Thank you for saying that.
Of course.
It's really amazing. I'm getting a lot out of this interview. I hope you all are too. Okay. So, forming the daily practice. I'm just going to recap the 4, we can do this together because I might forget, the 4 factors that you shared that really helped you sort of demystify this electronic music world and get where you're at today. The daily practice, and making it not so much about checking all of the perfect boxes, but about doing something meaningful and fun to you every day that keeps you engaged with your daily practice. I think that's it, right?
Yeah.
The second thing was the journaling, and that can look different for anyone. Everyone can form their own personal thing, but for you, it's just about like getting those thoughts out, and especially the negative thoughts, right? And looking at them and kind of being like, that's mean. I don't want to have that thought. I'm going to let that one go. That's really powerful. What was the third thing? Posting, sharing what you're doing more frequently, and going slowly through the class, learning slowly, learning at your own pace, letting it take as long as it takes. Okay, that's amazing. Is there anything else that you want to add onto that was, important to you in this learning process?
I think something to always come back to while I was, while in the course, is really remembering that you're not behind. And I know we've said that, but I feel like I need to write that, even put it on my computer, even right now, just any point you're not behind. Because again, when I started, I felt so diligent in watching the videos every day, practicing, and then life happened, and then I wouldn't watch a video for a couple of weeks, and then I just my mind would get into kind of like oh, you're behind. Just to remember, like you said, it's not a race, it's a marathon. Maybe it's not a marathon, it's just a sprint or a jog for a very long time. It's all just to have just to have fun. And there's so
Right.
much in modular that I found when I realized how much creative control you can have over just like the endless amount of sounds you can make. I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. It really blew my mind when I finally understood that you can really create a whole like galaxy of sounds. And that made me so excited to just like take your time. You'll make things in the process, and at the beginning when you're making things, it might sound kind of basic or elementary, but that's okay. And you'll continue creating things and it'll evolve over time. And just to always come back to the realization, it's, have fun, and you're not behind ever.
Yeah, that's so good. Thank you. That is such a good reminder. Speaking of making a galaxy of sounds with modular synths, that seems like a good segue. I'm going to pull up a link on the screen. For those of you who are interested in learning modular synthesis, if this conversation is exciting and you're like, hey, I want that support. I want to know how, these instruments work. I want to get deeper into my own music making practice. My class, Learning Sound and Synthesis, might be a good fit for you. It might be a good next step. soundandsynthesis.com. If you go to that link, you can sign up for the waitlist so that you're notified when enrollment opens. And actually, enrollment is opening for the spring 2024 cohort in like a week and a half. So it's coming very, very soon. I cannot wait. And Dominique, you were in the past cohort, but as you know, when you enroll, you have lifetime access. So you're welcome to come back. You can join us again in the next round of coaching calls, and I hope you do. And you can keep going at your own pace and you can keep reminding yourself that you're not behind, because it's there for you to go through at your own pace. If any of you who are watching have questions about learning sound and synthesis, what's in the class, if it's the right fit for you, send me a DM anytime and I would be happy to talk more. And the other thing that I wanted to share and maybe hear you talk a little bit more about is some of your music. So I'm going to pull up a link to your Bandcamp page for people to see. And this is to a specific album. So do you want to talk about this project?
Yeah, so it's my it's my husband, one of my good friends, and we so this album was kind of like a bunch of us, a lot of our jams and one of our performances, and it really kind of touches upon, I mean, we're using a lot of different instruments, a lot of, I'm playing the different flutes, we have percussion, we have different synths, and again, it's a lot of soundscapes and exploring that. And you can also you can bear witness to my improvisation and the just the joy that I'm having in exploring, because a lot of it's like imperfect and yeah, so we're planning on doing more performances as well, and more recorded things, but it's kind of the beginnings of us of performing together.
I love that. Okay, so go subscribe to the Bandcamp page, and that way you'll hear more when more comes. That's amazing. And I think I'm going to try to drop a link to your YouTube channel here in the comments. Sometimes the comments don't work all the way. So what I'll also do after we're done is I'll add it into the description of this video. Awesome. I just posted it there, so I think it went out. All right. Is there anything else, Dominique, you want to say about your journey, or that you want to just offer to folks watching before we wrap up for today?
Sign up. I think just for people that are nervous, and this is it, I've joined so many courses over the past few years on just everything, and I found this to be the most informative, educational experience to just learn something so monstrous, I think is the right term, because again, I've taken university online courses too, and I've always been like, this is not sticking. And the way in which you teach it has been so digestible, and again, I feel really confident in the way that you teach. And I'm like, oh, she said it this way. And I don't have to like search YouTube, search different accounts to find it, have people explain it different ways. It's just like a one-stop shop. And that's been really relieving in terms of like, okay, I'm learning it well. So little kudos to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying that. It does mean a lot. This class has been designed to be the most comprehensive sound and synthesis class that's out there, and to be like step by step, truly not assuming prior knowledge. Because I know how crazy that can feel when you're getting started, and it's like you're supposed to have known all of this other stuff before you began. So really trying to keep that in mind, and I'm glad to hear that you've had a good experience. Okay, thank you so much to everyone who has tuned in live, and a really big thank you to you, Dominique. It means a lot to have you in this class and in the community, and I look forward to hearing more of your music as it comes out, and hopefully seeing you perform live one day. We'll see.
Awesome.
That would be
Thank
great.
you.
All right, take care, everyone. Bye for now.